Are you?
I'm ready.
Okay.
All right. Today we'd like to welcome to the podcast Marty Reiswig. I can't talk today, or see. Marty is a husband, father of two, and an award-winning realtor in the Denver area. Some of those awards include the 5-star realtor for 5280 magazine, which is a huge magazine here in Denver. Top 7% of Denver's most productive realtors. That's huge. I want to talk about that. Mm-hmm. And Denver's Business Journal's 40 under 40. I love that. Are you still under 40?
Just a scotch. for like 3 more weeks.
I was like, how do I get in there before I'm 40? He is a business coach, advisor, and keynote speaker. He specializes in sharing his personal connection with Alzheimer's disease and how it has made him a better man. Love this. Thank you for coming today.
My pleasure. Thanks for having me.
But your realtor business is GoodFit Homes. I want to make sure that we talk about GoodFit and GoodFit Land.
Yeah, that's the new branch.
All the things. I love it.
Stuff,
I love it. It's like, what a million things can I do?
What else can I help buy and sell? Yeah.
That's awesome.
I'm going to be doing GoodFit toys, GoodFit belts. I think GoodFit belts would be the next good branch.
What about GoodFit shoes?
GoodFit shoes. Everybody thinks we're like Good Feet, which is like Eddie McCaffrey, I think, did like Good Feet shoes or something.
Yeah.
But we're not.
We could be like, Eddie's my brother. Like,
I totally should, yes.
Totally
yes.
should.
I don't run nearly as fast as he did.
I don't run, so.
Yeah, me neither.
What I need you to do is GoodFit earpieces, because nothing ever fits in my ear.
That is true. What is with that? I think it's because every single ear is bizarre looking and strangely shaped. Anyway.
I know. I'm always just like, I need an earpiece that actually fits.
Yeah.
In my tiny little ear. All right. Let's get to the questions.
Stop talking about ear holes.
Okay, we'll stop about talking about ear holes for now.
Okay,
maybe
just
later.
For now. It's really fascinating topic. So,
so my first question is always the same, and it is, what was your first job?
So my first job, I don't know that I've ever held down a real job. My first job was actually a little lawn mowing business that my brother started, and then he kind of graduated out of it, and I kind of took it on, and I mowed and trimmed lawns in Greeley, Colorado. You know what? It was a fantastic little business to own. My mom had lots of properties that she managed as a property manager, and I just mowed all of those, plus some other properties that I gained. And while all of my other friends were working for like, oh gosh, at the time minimum wage was like $5,
right.
$4.50 an hour. I was averaging like $20 to $30 an hour.
That's amazing.
And I would work 2 or 3 days a week all summer long, and I'd make more money in one summer than they did all stinking year. And so it was a great gig, and I was super tan and fairly in shape because I did not have a trailer. So I lifted my mower in and out of the truck several times a day, not to mention dumping all the grass over the side of the truck bed and then going to the dump and dumping it there. And it was very physical, tan intensive work. Yeah.
One of my cousins is a valet, and he's like in amazing shape, and I was like, I think I need to come valet like a couple days a week, like just to get the cardio.
Yeah. And how do they do that and not getting like dripping in sweat?
Yeah, I don't know how
that is a skill.
I know. I was like, maybe I need to do this. Like, if you would pay me to run, maybe that would work.
Maybe.
Maybe. So you said you've never held down an actual job.
Yeah.
And I wanted to talk about all your career iterations. Tell us about a couple of those.
So I'm sort of a remade man about every 4 to 7 years.
We love it.
So I went off to college to be a youth pastor. I did that for about 6 years total. Mm-hmm. Then I did church planting, which is a fancy way of saying like be an entrepreneur and start new churches. Mm-hmm. I started a network of house churches and did that for about 3 years, which is awesome because there was no building to pay for, no lights, no anything. And I was getting all of my personal income from missionary support. Oh. So family, friends, past churches and stuff would send us money for me to live on. So our network of house churches, all of the tithes and offerings, all of the giving, got to go almost entirely all right back out to benevolence and giving to the poor and the needy. So one lady, we were able to buy her a used car because hers went kaput and she didn't have the finances. We were able to save some people from losing their house, paid their bills for a few months. There was just some really awesome things. So, but during the, what do you call it, the recession, the economic downturn of 08, 09, 2010.
That little dip we all took.
Yeah, little. Somewhere in 2010, 2011, it became very apparent to me that I needed a real job or real income at least. And my mom had been a property manager, like I mentioned, and so I kind of became I went to real estate school to actually become a property manager. But while I was there, I was sort of recruited by this other real estate sales lady, and she convinced me, like, Marty, you were born to sell. People really like you, and all you got to do is tell them about the houses, like educate them. You're not really selling them anything. You're just educating them on the process and the product, and then let them make the decision. And so I decided to try that for a couple of years, and really took to it like fish to water. I
love it.
I love it. I love it. It's unlike anything else. I'm not trying to sell anybody something they don't really want.
But they haven't really decided that they need.
Well, right. And frankly, like, if you go to buy a car, okay, there's nothing wrong with being a car salesman. I know lots of really good car salesmen, good people, good, good high character. But the challenge that they have is they have to, in order to make any money, they have to sell you something they have on their lot. They can't take you, 3 doors down to the other car dealership and still make a commission. Whereas I can do that all day long. I can sell you any house you want in the whole area. So my job isn't to sell you something. My job is to find the something that you actually want.
And so how did you come up with the name GoodFit Homes then?
Exactly.
Because that like embodies, how you are a realtor for your clients.
Well, it helps that my brother is a brand management guru. He was asking me all of these amazing questions that helped me clarify kind of who I am and who I wanted to be and the clients that I wanted to have. And what that did is it sort of raised my awareness to what people were saying. He said, pay very close attention to how people either compliment you or your services, or what people say when they're in the house they want to buy or sell, or things like that. And over, people would walk into a house, spend only a few minutes in there, and inevitably, several times out of 10, more often than not, they would say, this home is a good fit for us, right? Just in common lingo. And so that's how it stuck. I sort of started realizing, oh man, I'm hearing good fit a lot for the house, but also that the clients and I are a good fit.
Right.
If you want a bulldog realtor that's absolutely going to destroy the other side of the table, and you only win if the other side loses, that's not me. I'm in it for a win-win deal for all parties, so that when at the end of the day we can close the deal and shake hands and everybody's happy. Those are the kinds of deals I like to negotiate as often as possible.
Right.
It's not always possible, but at least the clients and I should be a good fit for each other. And then the house should not just be a house. It should be a good fit for them culturally, for the size of their family or where their family is headed, for the activities in the community that they want to have. A house just isn't a house. It's your home. It's where you live your life, and it should be a place of peace and rest and solace and fun.
Right.
All of those things. So I'm not a salesman. I really try to consider myself a servant that asks really good questions and just helps you clarify what you want and need, and then how do we go and find that.
So hard in this market too, to find
it is
people's fits.
It is and it isn't. If you're just look, I think because I'm a realtor, I'm allowed to bash on them.
Yeah, talk about the market and talk about realtors. I love it.
Yeah. Okay. So one difficult thing about being a realtor is that about 70% of realtors are part-time.
Right.
The average realtor is 54, which is not a problem, but sells only 6 houses a year. That's either side, either helping maybe 3 buyers and 3 sellers. If you only do something 6 times in a year, while the rest of us that are full-time are doing it 20, 30, 40 times a year, we obviously have more experience, more knowledge, and an advantage over those people.
Right, because you know what's going on with the market. You've seen what's out there.
Exactly. And so the second challenge we have is that our job and our role in people's lives has become almost an entertainment joke, and HGTV is going to be the death of us. Because what they've done is they've taken, and it's like being, I mean, come on, we're not surgeons, but it's like taking a TV show and making it look like that the only thing the surgeon does is shows up and cuts a few things, and then magically everything's better.
Right.
And that's totally what HGTV does. Right.
It's made you a commodity.
It really has. It really has. And not that what we do, other people can't do. But there is something to doing it often, doing it consistently. Doing it well, having people refer you to their family and friends. That's the ultimate compliment. Because there's an expertise there that only comes over time and experience.
Right. Well, and I have a realtor friend who always says, you know, it's a limited practice of law too. So it's like
technically
super, super important to know, you know, what you're doing, what the new laws are, how things are changing.
Yep.
And it's ever revolving.
Yeah, so that's actually a technical way of putting it. So
Yeah.
in some states, you can only buy a house with a real estate attorney because it is a legal transaction.
Oh, wow.
But in Colorado, we're following the Conway-Bogue decision of like 1977 or something or other. Might have been in the 80s, that they actually defended the role of the realtor and basically said you are going to be allowed to practice limited law.
Right.
You're going to use our legal forms. And it says right at the top, I am not an attorney, and if you need, legal counsel, please seek that elsewhere. But yes, you got to be up on not only the market, the trends, the rules and laws, and frankly, we have a whole lot of liability we take on being in that role. And so I always tell people, look, if you want to go get your real estate license to save yourself some money and do your thing, that's fine. Just understand that you are taking risks. You are doing something that you don't really, even if you've done real estate school, you don't really know all the risks that you're taking.
Right. Well, and I say that with tax stuff all the time. Like, just because you can enter stuff into a TurboTax doesn't mean you're a preparer.
Exactly.
And the liability that comes with actually knowing what's happening is huge.
Yeah.
And I think there's a barrier to entry that people don't see that. Especially because I obviously am also practicing limited law.
Right.
And a lot of the time, like the law stuff, I'm like the legal stuff, but
yeah.
I'm elbow deep in tax law.
Yeah.
All the time. Sometimes it's like this deep, but right. So it's definitely an expertise.
Yeah.
And I think it's interesting that people don't see that. But you're just like you were saying, HGTV is kind of commoditized, which you guys do. And there's other places that have started to commoditize realtors.
Yeah, absolutely. And sometimes, look, I did a for sale by owner before I even became a realtor, and it worked out fine.
Right.
Looking back, that was a really dumb decision. I mean, did we save ourselves a few $1,000s? Yeah. But man, now knowing what I know, knowing what I know now, I would never do a for sale by owner. Those people can come back and sue the pants off of you.
I didn't know that.
And so there's just, you're really putting yourself out there by doing that.
So you pretty much answered my question about, what makes GoodFit Homes different than, all the other realtors out there. And really is, 20% do most of the deals.
Yeah, that's a big differentiator. Everybody can say, well, my service is better, or my knowledge is better, or my prices are better. I don't, with like 900,000 realtors in Denver,
There's so many.
I don't know, can you truly have a differentiator? I don't know. But I do know that I connect really well with my clients. Yeah. My clients usually become my friends. Yep. And it's because I really do want to serve them. Like, here's the thing. I've built my entire business practice and my own family's livelihood around getting referrals and repeat clients, right? So if I don't do a great job and even make my clients feel like I'm doing a great job, then they're never going to refer me, and my entire business falls apart.
Right?
Right? And so unlike some of the cold calling machines or the high marketing machines, they're dumping tons of money, time, and energy into building a business around, cold calling or marketing or things like that to strangers. Well, instead, I'm helping my clients save some of that money, and I'm dumping it into things like charity events or outings with families, or we rent out the local water park and have everybody come and play at the water park. Things that actually build relationship and community. And I would say, even though that's not totally unique, it's somewhat unique among high-producing agents.
Yes. I think I know about like one other realtor kind of locally here that does like events. But I get stuff in the mail from you like on a monthly basis. Like we're trying to create community. We like our people. We want to hang out with them.
Yeah, good.
Which I love.
Yeah, there's an old business adage that I'm sure I'm not stealing. And I think
that's fine.
it's that we treat clients like friends and friends like family. And so up to whatever point that the client is comfortable.
Right. So many realtors have built teams, and you kind of went that way, but then you've pulled back. Talk about what that's looked like for GoodFit Homes, and and for you,
Sure.
in those decisions?
Sure. It's actually been an interesting journey, and it's almost the tale of two books.
Right.
So when you go to Keller Williams, oftentimes the very first thing they do is give you a book called The Millionaire Real Estate Agent.
Yes.
And in that book, it lines out exactly how you can become a millionaire as a real estate agent. And you build this massive team, and everybody on the team, and I'm just going to say it like it is, and you can interpret whether you think it's good or not. Everybody on the team makes a whole lot less money than you do because you started it and you've built this thing. And if you follow that book and the numbers work out, you actually net $1 million a year, which, oh my gosh, that would be incredible. But at the end of the day, that team is like 17 people, hundreds and hundreds of transactions per year. And I mean, it's a big company at that point, right? With lots of liability, lots of moving parts. And that's fine. And so what I was doing is I was, plowing. I mean, I'm a hard worker. When I see a
goal like that,
a pot at the end of the rainbow, man, I'm going to go after it. So I worked at that really hard, built a small team, had a few buyer's agents, a full-time admin, tried having some salespeople come in, did all kinds of fun, wonderful things, and really had a wonderful team full of good people. But we've actually made some mistakes. I didn't treat some of my clients as well as I should have. Kind of lost touch with that day-to-day, really high-level service, and kind of lost some of that momentum. And I think it was because we shifted to I think I tried to get too big too fast.
Scale too fast.
Yeah, and kind of lost. I really did lose that individual, personal attention to people. And there's some, if you want to sell your house and you go with a huge team, there really are some advantages to that, and you can spin that and sell that. And if you want to go with a single agent, there really are some advantages to that. There's also negatives of both of those. And we were experiencing some of those negatives. We had people asking, like, well, who am I going to talk to today? Well, which agent's even going to meet me at the house? Am I going to meet somebody new again? There was just some downsides. So long story short, did the team thing, then became a productivity coach for Keller Williams Avenues in Westminster. Really enjoyed that. They actually dubbed me a business coach because it wasn't just productivity. It was all kinds of things to help people start their small businesses in real estate. Really enjoyed doing that while running my team. And then we started losing that momentum. And so I shifted back to come back here to the Denver Tech Center, Keller Williams, and became a C-level person on a team. Wonderful, long-standing team, but they were going through some transition. So even though we did like a 3 or 4 month trial period that went really well, both of us really enjoyed one another. I just figured out it really wasn't for me, and that I just want to do real estate for people, with people, and individually. And frankly, if I go from selling 36 houses a year to selling 18 or 20, my profit margins will be roughly about the same.
Right.
It's not going to change my personal life.
Nope.
And it's going to be a lot less leadership and management and things like that. I'm in the middle of that transition.
Yeah.
So that sort of remains to be seen if I can actually pull off doing those transactions without all that help. Because my assistants along the way have just been incredible. I had 2 full-time administrative assistants that each, at separate times in the team, that just made me look way better than I am. So I miss them for sure. But for now, this is a good time for me to sort of transition. I'm turning 40 and really sort of reanalyzing my life and how I want to spend my time.
Right, how you want to spend the rest of it.
And a lot of those shifts over the years switched books. Remember I talked about the Millionaire Real Estate Agent?
Yeah.
Well, then I started going to this 3 to 5 club that you've probably talked about in other podcasts.
We don't talk about 3 to 5 ever.
Okay. Started going to 3 to 5 club, and I realized
it's like the Illuminati.
Just kidding. Yeah, exactly. I don't have to chase this giant goal of having this huge, big business that, frankly, keeps me in the day-to-day still.
Forever and always.
Forever and always. Only to build a giant nest egg and then, like, sometime retire or something. So, look, I'm not against being a multimillionaire if that comes to pass someday.
Hey, sure,
but,
I'll take it.
Right? I'd be willing to take that challenge.
Yeah, I'll take the check.
But it gave me a more clear goal. And the clearer goal is, who am I really? What do I really want in life? And what's a reasonable way to get there? And building a smaller sort of a lean, mean relationship machine, and having a very few number of agents on my team, maybe an admin, maybe not, maybe even parsing that out to virtual assistants or to little contracting things here and there, and really almost like scale down my life to actually simplify and enjoy it more. Because I don't think that the size of your bank account actually has anything to do with the size of your joy and happiness.
Right.
I've seen people with lots of money, and I've seen people with no money. And I've seen people that are really happy, and I've seen people that are really unhappy.
Yes.
And there is not a direct correlation.
No, and I would even say that the people that I've seen and worked for that have had a lot of money, there's a lot more angst and stuff, and like it
Right.
just, it just becomes focused on the money.
Yeah.
Even for like the entire family, like
Yeah.
I've seen like entire families. I worked in the family office for a while, and they had more money than Crucis, and it's just like why? Like it was a disaster.
Yeah.
Like their interpersonal relationships were a total disaster. And I was
So-
like, is this happy for y'all?
Right. There was an interesting study done by the Harvard School of Business a few years ago, and it's actually a bell curve of happiness as you
Right.
go up in annual income. And it actually goes down after the 150 to 175 a year. It plateaus a bit, and then after 225,
Really?
actually your happiness level actually starts to decrease.
That is fascinating.
And of course, that's their own, that's this massive
Their own
polls.
assessment.
It's their own assessment. And they're actually more stressed and more unhappy. They don't exactly know who their friends are. They don't know where to put all of this money or what to do with it. They have all these people coming after it all the time. I just think it puts you into a different world mentally. So I don't know. I might be willing to take the challenge though.
That
to be
is
wealthy.
really, really interesting. And then I think about like the actual like health effects.
Mhm.
Like they're
That come
probably
along
more
with stress.
stressed. They probably are, working 12-hour days. Like it's just not.
Yeah.
It's not a happy life.
Yeah. So the beautiful thing about
You're
the 3 to 5
working-
club.
You're living to work.
That's right. Is that it really gives you a new couple of targets.
Right. A new shift too.
And the target becomes, what's my ideal lifestyle?
What do I want my life to look like?
Yeah.
Absolutely.
How many hours or days a week do I want to work? How much money do I want to make? And those things even ask deeper, more important sort of existential and meaningful questions like, well, what am I wired to be?
Yeah. Why am I here?
Why am I here? What is my highest and best contribution to the world or to my family or to myself? Like, how do I live in that kind of a day-to-day life? Which leads us to possibly talking about the next subject.
Thanks, Marty. Thanks for that segue.
Sure.
So the next subject. I love it. So making GoodFit Homes more lean and mean is going to allow you to start speaking more. Do you want to talk about like why you've started speaking, or what that looks like, and your work with the Alzheimer's associations? So that was kind of my next question, but let's talk about the speaking stuff, and we can talk about your work with Alzheimer's and how that's affected.
Yeah, and frankly, those
How
will
you
probably
feel.
blend a lot.
I think they do. And how you feel about, what you want your life to look like, because it's really affected by your father's Alzheimer's diagnosis and watching that happen for him.
Yeah. So taking GoodFit Homes to lean and mean and giving back my life, kind of trying to get off the treadmill like Chuck Blakeman says.
Right.
Really isn't just so I can go live on a beach somewhere and be self-indulgent.
Oh, I want that. Can I get that option?
Surprisingly, the people you talk to that do that end up coming back to like,
I think
having a purpose in life.
What did you say? I'd like to try it.
I'd like to give it a shot. Yeah,
Like-
I'd be willing to try.
I'd be willing to try it.
Yeah, at least for a couple of months, right? So it really is to get back to my purpose in life. Being a public speaker was something that I started doing when I was 16. I was the National Day of Prayer speaker in Greeley, Colorado at age 16, and then started doing preaching and teaching throughout high school and college. Became a youth minister and did a lot of speaking for that on a weekly basis at church, but also as a church camp speaker during the summers and workshop speaking and different things like that. So I've really enjoyed it. I got to travel with Josh McDowell. He's a public speaker and author in the Christian world. And that was just a fantastic experience to learn and see what that's like. And I think that God or the universe or whatever didn't allow me to become a public speaker to a great degree at that time, because I was kind of a young, arrogant person.
We don't know what we
that
don't know.
thought I knew everything. Yeah. And I always was like, well, these old people in their 40s and 50s don't respect me because I haven't lived my life, but I have, and here's why, and blah, 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 blah. And I think I was very self-centered and not serving of others while I was speaking. And so,
which I think you're supposed to be at that age. Like, how old were you?
I mean, your frontal lobe isn't even like fully
attached,
functioning at this point, which is why young men go off to war, because you believe you're invincible. But so long story short, I am kind of coming full circle and wanting to do more public speaking now that I have lived and built some businesses and been through life a bit more. And I want to share with people just a perspective that I have gained from my life story.
Right.
Yeah.
All the things that fit in. So you're currently going to be doing some large and small stages. You're doing just lunch and learns to, keynote. So what are some of the topics that you've formulated for these speaking engagements? I've seen you speak on, what was it? I think it was time management. No. What was the 3 to 5 one?
I've done productivity stuff in 3 to 5 Club. I've done the Big Why.
It was the Big Why stuff, which we all need. I think I need it on a daily basis.
Right?
Right.
Yeah. I've heard it said something like vision leaks, which is why you need
leaks.
to
Yes.
keep coming back to it.
How I love that, vision leaks. Marty Reiswig.
Yeah. So just to clarify, yes, I'll do lunch and learns and workshops and all of that. Basically, I have like a 90-minute keynote speech that I can then do breakout sessions or workshops on, or miniature topics that basically tells my story, connects to what I've learned from it, along with lots of stats and stories from others that also flesh it out and how it can actually impact your life. And so oftentimes what I'm asked to speak about directly is how Alzheimer's has made me a better man.
Yes.
And so that, I want to make sure to address your question directly. What was the question specifically? Just topics?
Yeah.
So
what is your so you have that 90-minute keynote.
Yeah. The topics really range around your big why, how you're designed, what choices you make with your time, talent, and treasure. So your time and money and energy. That's exactly right.
It's our favorite subject to talk about anyway, but yeah.
Yeah. It's really all 3 to 5 Club stuff. It's biblical stuff. It's other religious books stuff. It's essentialism. It really comes back oftentimes to a few topics around the fact that you will die.
No.
Right? And people don't like to talk about that.
Yeah, they don't.
But there's an interesting time period in philosophy in the 1500s where there was this really catchy phrase going around in Latin about memento mori. Memento mori simply means remember you will die, or remember death. And it was around that time where there was lots of art that were like the head skeletons and things like that. And even the Queen Mary at the time carried around a watch. It was like a pocket watch that on the face of it, the hands of the watch were skull bones, or were skeleton bones, and inscribed on it was a saying about dying. And the reason why it's actually a positive thing to come face to face with your own mortality, and even not just to do it once, like having a near-death experience or having cancer or something like that, but even to consistently remind yourself, whether it's with your bathroom mirror or something in your car or something in your pocket, to consistently remind yourself that you will die, actually causes you to live a better life, because it makes you ask more important questions. It makes you question, what am I really doing with my time? What am I really doing in my relationships? What am I really doing with my money? What am I doing to make an impact? Whatever it is in your world. Not everybody wants to be a motivational speaker. Not everybody can be Tony Robbins. But what are you doing in your workplace on a day-to-day basis to make the place a better place?
Or just to impact at least one person a day. Like,
yes.
That's what I always want to, like, my thing is, like, how do I put some light or support or whatever into somebody's day?
Mm-hmm.
Like, it could just be one person.
And oftentimes what I see through coaching and consulting and public speaking is people are coming around to being congruent.
Mm-hmm.
What I mean by that is oftentimes when I really have a sit-down conversation with people about this, they come to the realization that they've always wished they were a little bit different of a person,
mm-hmm.
right?
Mm-hmm.
Whether that means they've always wished they were a little bit more successful in business, or they wish they were always a little bit more attentive at home, but they're busy on their cell phones, or they really wish they live in California, but they live in Wisconsin, right? And there's kind of that road has a fork in it. And one way is you need to go ahead and go move to California.
Right.
Because you actually really do, if you lived a congruent life, you would live in California for whatever that reason is for you.
Right.
But that matters so much to you that you should do that. Or you should decide that really isn't that important and bury it because it's causing you angst and sadness for no good reason. And so when you really ask, when you realize you are going to die, and it might be sometime soon.
Right. Could be tomorrow.
Then that leads you to ask the more difficult, deeper questions, which then leads you to live if you take action on the answers to those questions,
mm-hmm.
it leads you to live a more congruent life with yourself. What do I value? Who do I want to be? How do I want to spend my time, energy, and money? And if you actually pursue that and make actual concrete changes on a day-to-day basis and make more and more decisions based on that new vision of yourself, you gradually live this more fulfilled and congruent life. And it might mean that you don't buy that mansion on the golf course. Or it might mean that you do. I'm not here to judge one way or the other.
Anybody's congruence.
Right? If you want a Maserati and a big old house and that is in your congruence, awesome. Go do that.
So how do you help people find congruence? We're just going to go completely off.
So my talk centers a lot around Alzheimer's.
Right.
My father.
Of mortality.
Exactly. So my father is only 65 and he's been in a nursing home for a couple of years now. And he's actually had Alzheimer's for about 15 years. My father got Alzheimer's around age 50, along with his brother who went through it years before, who got it in his late 40s and was passed in his early 50s. And along with a bunch of my father's cousins, which leads you to ask, well, who are these grandparents?
Yes.
And what happened? So my grandpa Ralph, he actually died the year I was born. And before that, he had years and years of early onset Alzheimer's. He got diagnosed there was no diagnosis back then. He became affected with the Alzheimer's disease in his mid 40s. And so it turns out my dad carries an extremely rare genetic mutation that causes early onset Alzheimer's.
Wow, I didn't even know there was a thing.
Yeah, well, you didn't know because it's so rare. Like, we are one of only 640 some known families on the planet that carry this dodgy gene, like my UK friends like to say. And so I have formed this very private Facebook group of families that have these problems, alongside of the research community that the Alzheimer's research community absolutely values these families, because they can tell by our blood and by our family histories which of us is going to get Alzheimer's, at what age, and how quickly probably will they pass. And because of that, we can now actually study Alzheimer's like in a beaker.
That's
right?
So crazy.
Because if you had to study general Alzheimer's all over the country, it would be so astronomically expensive and take so many years. Nobody would even pay to do it. But because of this, they call us it's not a guinea pig population, but it's one of those little tiny animals. What's another word for guinea pig?
Gerbil.
A gerbil. No, that's not even it. I don't know. We're a tiny little orphan population. So we're this tiny little population of people who they can study biologically what happens to Alzheimer's people that they know are going to get Alzheimer's.
That's crazy. So you've come face to face with the fact that you have the gene.
Actually, I don't know if I have the gene or not, because I don't want to know.
Oh, you haven't been tested.
My brother got tested and he's negative.
They want you to test though.
No, actually, the study's software knows.
Oh.
So it can decide if it wants to give me a drug or not.
Uh-huh.
It had to know whether or not I carry the gene.
Oh,
but none of my doctors or researchers or nurses know, because it's a double-blinded study.
That's crazy.
Yeah. So yes, because of this situation and the family genetics, I've come face to face with my mortality.
Right. Like because of my family, I could be gone at 50.
Right. So I'm turning 40 and I'm realizing
I might only have 10
pardon
years.
my French, but holy shit.
That's fine. French is fine.
I might only have 10 years left, if that.
Right.
So a lot of my cousins and uncles and everybody gets it in their late 40s, 47. So, so you start looking at life a little bit differently as soon as you put a time frame on it.
Right, because you have mortality. Like your mortality is pretty much, if you have the gene, it's laid out.
Well, and the death clock starts ticking.
Yeah, most of us don't have that. Most of us aren't going to be like, well, I'm going to get heart disease in 10 years and whatever. But because of this gene, it's highly likely.
Exactly. And it turns out I've talked to some counselors and stuff that a lot of people in their 50s, 60s, and 70s do get this death clock ticking in their head, which is why they start spending more time with their grandchildren, trying harder to retire,
and
right?
People.
And they're different people. They're like spoiling kids or whatever, because they realize like, I'm not going to be around forever. I better kind of enjoy it.
Right.
Or maybe I should be nicer to certain people. Or maybe I just don't give a rip and I'm going to say whatever the hell I want because I'm an old crotchety man.
Right.
But at least I'm congruent with that.
I'm congruent with my get off my lawn mentality.
Yeah. So it kind of pushes you to be a little bit more honest with yourself and be who you are.
That's interesting.
Really weird experience that I've gone through. I mean, knowing this throughout my life, it has affected me. And I had like a midlife crisis in my early 30s rather than my early 50s.
Right. Because your lifespan could be so much shorter.
Exactly.
It's crazy.
Yeah. So I talk a lot about big why.
Mm-hmm.
Why do you exist? How are you wired? All of that stuff. I talk a lot about my story and how it has changed my life and how it could change yours by being very aware of mortality.
Right.
So I talk about why and time and really what your cause or purpose is. And even how to break that down. Like, how do you ask yourself and your loved ones and your friends so that you can gain clarity and then live in that clarity?
Very cool.
Yeah.
I love it. Yay. Okay. Awesome. I love it. So before I ask my last question, what is the easiest way for people to find you, or where's the easiest way?
So you can go to the website, goodfithomes.com. That's going to be the real estate stuff. Probably the easiest way to find me. Well, you can find out a lot about my story by literally Googling Marty Reiswig Alzheimer's. Worked with the Denver Alzheimer's Walk. You mentioned that. And there's a bunch of articles.
That you've written?
No, actually, just interviews.
Oh, just interviews.
Yeah. ABC, NBC, just different stuff about our personal Alzheimer's story.
And you've done some speaking around the Alzheimer's story too, right?
Yeah.
Just specifically for Alzheimer's.
To drug companies, researchers, to corporations, things like that about where the Alzheimer's research has come from and where we're going.
So fascinating.
We're actually going toward prevention rather than a treatment after the fact, because Alzheimer's is developing in your brain 15 to 20 years before you're symptomatic. So once you start asking the same question over and over, and you start hearing your grandma ask, 5 minutes ago, Grandma, you asked me the same question. Well, 15 years to 25 years before that, her brain was already starting to get Alzheimer's. So how do we slow down that train before it's going 90?
It's really interesting. My husband's grandmother has Alzheimer's, and so we were, and hers is kind of late onset, but it's just and that's really interesting to me. That's very interesting to know. Like 15 years, like how do we stop it? Yeah. So how do we detect it early on, and then how do we administer a drug or some kind of treatment that actually slows the progression of it? That's where
the war on Alzheimer's that the National Institute of Health from the U.S. government is dumping hundreds of millions of dollars into this project now, finally, because it's the next great economic disaster. Our whole society is aging so much and living so long that they're developing Alzheimer's and costing our entire medical system and everybody way too much money. And so, because of it being an economic problem, now the government's paying attention.
Cares because it has to do with money.
Right? So anyway, the war on it is like they're aiming at a treatment no later than 2025.
That's crazy. I love it.
Yeah.
Okay.
So how can they reach me?
Yes.
Is Google me or just Marty Reiswig at gmail.com. I don't care if people have my email address. I'll just unsubscribe if you subscribe me to stuff.
So I'm going to go back to the real estate stuff real quick.
Yeah, please.
Final question. What is the one thing everyone who is thinking about buying a home should do or know?
Well, first of all, you should contact me.
Endeavor. Right? Contact Ryan.
Because while I do the public speaking for pro bono or whatever, like I still need to sell some houses.
Right?
Yeah. So the one thing, it's different for buyers and sellers. Can I do quick?
Yeah.
Okay. So for buyers, the one thing you really should know is your budget and have an absolute, and I know you love this, my finance friend, but have an absolutely, we are not going to spend more than this. Mm-hmm. And I say this because of the topic we just covered.
Right.
I will oftentimes have very meaningful conversations with my clients and actually talk them down in purchase price of home, because I find out, well, they love to travel the world, or they really want to put their kids into private school or whatever. So have a budget and absolutely stick to it.
That's congruent.
That's congruent with your big why and your life goals.
Right.
Because you don't, I've had this experience myself, and I've had way too many clients become house poor, and it is a terrible experience when every month you're throwing tons of money at your house and you can barely afford to go out for steak. I like to say, buy a hamburger house, not a steak house.
Right.
Right?
I love it.
No. Sorry. Buy a house where you can still go out to steak. So buy a steak house, not a hamburger house. You don't want to be left having like hamburger helper.
Right.
Because you're shoving off, way too much of your budget. So it's typically with all of your, I like to estimate 25 to 33% of your budget, your expense budget for your family should be around your housing. When it's over that, people start to really feel house poor,
and it's
40, 50%.
Hard to do, especially in this market.
It is. And I believe in paying yourself first and giving, money to the needy and stuff like that. And so, you might have this big fancy house, but does it suck to, are you pulling your hair out to pay that bill? Well, then it's not worth it. I mean, just live below your means and enjoy, some spending cash.
And houses are maintenance.
So totally. So that's the buying side. And the budget is the first because it leads to all the other decisions.
Right, every other decision.
Helps solve lots of other questions. On the selling side, the question is, how much can you do or pay to get done to go ahead and sell your house a little bit higher and faster? Mm-hmm. I know that's, staging and painting and carpet and all of that stuff, and it can be a big headache. If you're not willing to do those things, even in this market, because it is shifting, the last 6 weeks has been
I've heard that.
Way slower. So if you're not willing to do those things, just understand you are going to need to give that as a discount. If your carpet is 20 years old, if your painting is, avocado all over the house,
Is that even a thing?
No. But,
living.
But you'd be surprised. If you're not willing to clean it, paint it, carpet it, do the very basics, you are going to pay for it. And that's fine.
Yeah, but know that you're going to pay for it.
You're making choices. This entire talk should be called Make Good Choices. Which is what I tell my children.
Right? Make good choices. Well, that's what I tell my kids every morning. I'm like, make good choices. Love you. Bye.
And somehow in adulthood, we lose our minds and forget that you are a product of your choices. Your entire life, minus stuff that happens to you, real health problems, whatever. Your entire life is your choices.
Right.
So if you don't like it, change it. Make better choices. Put down the remote and go for a jog.
Oh, man.
Says the guy who never runs.
No running.
Yeah.
There's no running. Awesome. Well, thank you so much for coming.
Oh, this is my pleasure. Thank you so much for having me.
Yay.
Hey y'all, thanks for listening. If you found this podcast to be inspiring, helpful, and entertaining, please like and subscribe. This helps us grow the community and reach more people. If you are interested in learning more about this episode's guest or accessing any of the books or other resources mentioned in this episode, be sure to check out the description box below. Until next time, be abundant.